Steve Shaw from Paddington Arts. Well, we manage a space that is specifically and exclusively for youth and community arts use. There are a lot of issues, and first of all, because we even though we have young people from all over Westminster and indeed further afield, we are essentially a local resource, and people come to us from the local vicinity. So the issue of to have a community space for Westminster would ask a lot of questions. But in terms of moving this whole issue forward, which obviously myself and a lot of people here are interested in, I think there's two areas where perhaps our arts officers could help us with. One is in terms of networking those people working in this area of arts organisations working with the community in terms of what resources we have, because we probably don't have very much. And so we can sort of think about what we would like to see that we don't have, but also just in generally, while the gap and the divide between ourselves as running and working with the community and the commercial sector, it's a very big gap, and anything that can be done to sort of to communicate, to help each other. For example, we have the community there were events put on by the council, one at the Palladium and one at Drury Lane, that were specifically for community groups, plus professional organisations working in Westminster, and they were fantastic and very successful. And I'd love to, even something like that, I'd love to see happen again.
Yep, that's more of an arts and culture strategy issue, which Valentina deals with in planning. But yes. Agree.
In order to try and answer David Shaw's point, I think that it's surely going to depend area by area. In Soho, the public realm is in such a bad state that actually that's probably the priority. The other problem is that I'm aware of 3 recent planning applications which, as a planning gain, have sought to offer some form of community use. Well, that's fine in terms of offering it as a planning thing, and it's fine for building the space there to a shell condition. But unless there's any money that goes with it, A, to equip it and kit it out, and B, to run it, even if it's rent-free, the rates and all on the other costs, many of the organisations have been, or many of these spaces have been unable to be used. And so I think that may not be true for other parts of the city. And in some areas, there are probably people who are dying to get into these things, but it doesn't always work out, and they don't always get let. And I think that planning is only one part of it. And certainly in some areas, I think the public realm and even affordable housing and one or two of these other things, improving public transport, cycle parking, all of these 106 obligations. And for developers, it's not just a sort of endless pot. At some point, if you try and get too much out of them, the scheme isn't viable. So I would say that in our area, these sorts of spaces are not the highest priority. That's my personal view.
We've spoken a lot about theatres. Are there other art forms that people think are hindered by planning or licensing processes that could be encouraged more? But Elizabeth, you have the...
I was going to refer to the 106 point, if I just may add to that, because it is a very important issue for the community, and it's interesting to hear your views there. I think it has to be done on a case-by-case basis. We've heard the gentleman from Soho say public realm, for example, is important for Soho residents. In Victoria, we are more cynical about whether public realm benefits us and whether that would be a community priority. We think it's background for good retail or whatever, but not necessarily an advantage to us. And so we would encourage big developers, if they're going to be thinking along a line where they will be burdened with the 106, and I appreciate there has to be an end to the burden of 106 to developers, to actually contact directly the community groups to find out what they think, rather than receive the wish list first through the council. Because I think there is some cynicism about what that money gets used for and whether main programme, in fact, should be dealing with some of those issues and not Section 106, because it's not always a community benefit that comes through from that.
Gentleman at the back.
Yes, thank you. I was very interested in your question because it's the point I was actually going to raise. But could I put in a plug there for orchestral rehearsal space? There's a very thriving amateur orchestral life in London, both chamber, full symphony, and indeed opera. And it is a nightmare finding central London rehearsal spaces. The size typically will need to be a gym or a large school hall, so it's fairly spacious. And, of course, it does make quite a lot of noise. I'm not sure which of your various arms, planning gain, planning this, planning that, but if that demand could be kept in mind, a lot of people will be extremely grateful. Thank you.